Okay, so your belief back then was you were fired from the Louisiana State Police because you were actively involved in trying to bring better conditions to the inmates. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right, in the entire area. Yes, sir.
Okay, so tell me how kidnapping Mr. Ladner, in your mind, was going to help that situation.
It would just bring attention to it.
Was
Because
Mr. Ladner in any way involved with the inmates in jail?
No, sir.
How did you pick Mr. Ladner out to be the person you were going to kidnap?
Yes, sir.
If I could interject, I really apologize. I apologize. It's just, I think at the time that, Leroy had a mental breakdown.
And that's his attorney, a former Louisiana prosecutor turned defense attorney who is speaking up on behalf of his client, who in 1987 did really something that made no sense. It did something that one might think maybe he did go off the rocker, and that was his approach that he took to the jury back in 1988, saying that he had temporary insanity when he kidnapped a random man, held him at gunpoint to try to bring awareness to inmates in Louisiana jails and prisons. And this man was a former police officer who claims to have been fired because he was trying to do things like that. I don't know. It's a weird case, but in some ways, I think it's quite interesting because it's very rare for someone to be acquitted on temporary insanity. But is it possible that this man was actually just that? Let's see if the board recommends to the governor to commute his sentence.
So, Mr. Brown, you are Leroy Brown. Your DOC number is 122771. You're classified as a first felony offender. You're here this morning seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in Ouachita Parish in September 1988 to a life sentence for aggravated kidnapping and to 15 years for armed robbery. Mr. Brown, is that information correct?
It is correct.
Okay. Mr. Marabella?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Brown, my name is Tony Marabella. Your case was assigned to me, so I'll be the one to begin our interview. Mr. Brown, how old are you, sir?
64.
64 years old. And how long have you been in prison on these charges?
I think I got arrested in 1988.
You've been in prison the whole time?
That is correct.
Roughly 34 years, is that about right?
It is correct.
Mr. Brown, it's my understanding that prior to coming to prison, you were in law enforcement. Is that right?
Louisiana State Police.
How long were you a state policeman?
Approximately 5 years.
You were in law enforcement in other areas before that, weren't you? Weren't you a sheriff's deputy?
Homer Police Department and Concordia Parish Sheriff Office.
How long were you in law enforcement altogether?
Approximately 7 to 8 years.
And this is your first offense and only offense, is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Tell me a little bit about what happened.
The arrest itself, the incident itself.
Yeah.
Okay. That was I committed the offense of aggravated kidnapping and armed robbery.
Well, I understand the charges. Tell me specifically what you did and why you did it. Were you a trooper at the time that this happened?
No, sir. I had been terminated in 1987, I believe.
Okay, about a year before. What were you terminated for?
That was a rough spot on my shotgun my radio, CB radio wasn't installed properly. There was a previous suspension of a driver's license. It's what was called an aggravated condition. There was one incident which was a reprimand. There was another incident which was a suspension, and then there was another incident with the shotgun and the CB radio, and it was called
Well,
aggravated condition.
Why was your driver's license suspended?
The driver's license was suspended because I sold someone a car and they didn't have insurance on it, and they wrecked it.
Wasn't involved in drinking or drugs or anything like
Oh,
that?
no, sir, nothing like that. Okay.
Now, were you taking any sort of medication back then before this crime occurred?
No, sir. Back then I wouldn't even take Tylenol.
Okay. Did you have any sort of mental issues prior to this crime arising?
To me, it was a mental break. It was definitely totally out of character with myself.
I do understand that, but I'm trying to understand why that occurred. Were you going to any sort of doctors back then, a psychiatrist, or mental health counselor, or anything like that between 87 and 88?
No, sir, I was not.
What kind of work were you doing between 87 and 88?
I was doing painting and sheetrock with my brother.
So tell me what happened on this particular day that you got to the Mary Mart. Tell me what you did. Tell me why you did what you did as best you can recall.
Best I can recall that I committed the offense of kidnapping where Mr. Landers was taken from his place of employment to my residence.
Okay. And why did you do that?
There was no reason other than the fact to bring attention to my plight.
And what was your plight?
My plight was a contest with a situation that was going on in Catahoula Parish where some inmates had received some unfair treatment, beatings, and what have you.
Why were you involved in the unfair treatment of the inmates? Why was that a cause you took on yourself?
Well, I felt that that more could have been done to resolve the situation, and I was fired because it was not so much of a rust spot and scratches on my shotgun, but the fact that I was bringing attention to it.
Okay, so your belief back then was you were fired from the Louisiana State Police because you were actively involved in trying to bring better conditions to the inmates. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right, in the entire area. Yes, sir.
Okay, so tell me how kidnapping Mr. Ladner, in your mind, was going to help that situation.
It would just bring attention to it.
Was
Because
Mr. Ladner in any way involved with the inmates in jail?
No, sir.
How did you pick Mr. Ladner out to be the person you were going to kidnap?
No more than the fact that somewhere along the way I had received information that he was involved in dealing drugs. That's it.
You thought Mr. Ladner was somehow involved in dealing drugs?
Yes, sir.
If I could interject, I really apologize. I apologize. I think at the time that, Leroy had a mental breakdown. And even though he says these things about Freddie Landers, I think it goes back to what happened at the time. I just want to apologize for a statement about the victim here. But I think, Leroy had such a mental breakdown. I think it's difficult for him to bring these facts to you, sir. And I just wanted to give you that overall, threshold of where he's coming from when he's trying to rearticulate these events. And I think that could be explained by the 3 doctors that said he had an affective personality disorder at the time. And I apologize for interrupting, but I just want to give some understanding to where Leroy's coming from when he's making these statements. Yeah, I think it comes.
I sort of suspected that, and I appreciate your comments. So,
thank you, sir.
You don't need to apologize about that. Mr. Brown, what was going on with you at that time? I mean, what ultimately, you had some sort of a breakdown, obviously.
Correct.
At some point, there was a question as to whether or not you were not guilty and not guilty by reason of insanity. You sort of continuously bring that up. How did that first come about? When did you first realize there was a problem with your thinking, or that you were having a breakdown?
That was explained to me at the Washita Parish Sheriff Office by a psychiatrist. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name. He was a real thin guy with glasses, and he explained to me that being a manic depressive, and he had a couple of things that he named that, and he stated that the situation could be corrected with counseling and medication, which he took it on himself to provide both. But
you actually went to trial, is that correct?
That is correct.
Was your plea not guilty and not guilty by reason of insanity?
That is correct.
And the jury rejected that and found you guilty of both charges. Is that right?
That is correct.
Now, let's talk about what you've done while you've been in prison. Tell me about some of the things that you've done and some of the things that you've learned about your condition. What have you done in terms of your mental health? Are you currently on medication?
No, sir, I'm not.
Okay. Are you seen regularly by a mental health counselor while you've been in prison?
No, sir, I'm not.
Okay. Have you been in the past seen by a mental health counselor while you've been in prison?
Yes, sir. The gentleman I just stated at the Washita Parish Sheriff Office, who concluded that after his treatment, that my situation was pretty well rectified.
Now, have you taken any programs while you've been in prison?
Yes, sir, I have.
Tell me what programs you've taken and what programs you consider to be important.
The alternative to violence, and there were 2 others that I've taken also. And
did you take Cage Your Rage?
Yes, that is correct. That's one of them.
That's the anger management program?
Yes, sir. There should be 2 more.
You had your high school diploma before you came to prison, is that right?
That is correct. I went to Northeast Louisiana University for about 3.5 years. I think I had 1 semester to go to before I received my diploma, but I had contact with a Houma PD police officer who talked me into joining the force. And while working with the Houma Police Department, there was a guy that tried to run over us with a motorcycle, and it was witnessed by someone. And this guy just happened to be a Louisiana state representative and also the lawyer for Houma PD, and he talked me into joining the state police, which is what I wanted to do all along. And so I never went back to finish the hours to get my diploma. But the warden here has the classes I attend, I think you've got the anger management and
Yeah, I was going on, the alternative violence program, Mr. Marabella, is slightly different from the anger management program. That was a separate and distinct program. That's just all I was going to mention. These attended the alternative to violence program several years ago, as well as the cage of rage.
Okay.
They're both dealing with controlling your violent behavior.
Mr. Brown, when you came to prison, you were taking some medication?
no, sir, I quit taking the medication at the Ouachita Parish Sheriff Office under the advice of the psychiatrist. The biggest problem I had during the mental break was a lack of sleep. I'd probably go 4 or 5 days and not sleep but a couple of hours.
Do you consider yourself having any mental issues today?
Oh, no, sir. I sleep fine.
And how long do you think your mental issues have been resolved?
Well, ever since the psychiatrist at the Ouachita Parish Sheriff Office, and
how long ago was that?
that's about 34 years, 33, 34 years.
So for the last 34 plus years, you consider yourself to be in pretty good mental health.
Yes, sir.
Do you have an explanation for the break? What caused you to have the mental breakdown? Do you know that?
Well, I'm sure
Can they come to grips with why that occurred?
I'm sure the stress and the lack of sleep.
Let's talk a little bit about your disciplinary record. You've had approximately 60 write-ups. Is that correct?
That is correct.
When was the last time you had a write-up?
Oh, it's got to be 4 years ago.
And what was that for?
The medication that was in the pack that we were taking, I had taken, they weren't in the pack, and I don't even remember what the other one was. What was
Contraband, is that what it was for?
yeah, that's it. Mhm.
What is your current custody status? Are you a trustee of any sort?
No, sir. But this is a regular inmate. Like I said, I hadn't had a write-up in but that's 4 years, right?
Warden, what can you tell us about Mr. Brown?
Mr. Marabella, I've known Offender Brown since he's been here for 33 plus years. And if you look at his conduct record, it's improved greatly since the turn of the century, since 2000. He's only had 14 write-ups in the last, since that time. And his last write-up was in 2018. Leroy's, I've got to know his parents when they were visiting him up here pretty regularly. They're good folks. They had a good dad. I think your mom passed on, but his dad and mom were really good folks, and I got to know them pretty good when they were up here visiting. And Leroy's has done well at the institution, considering he's had some physical medical problems. He's had a lot of medical problems, orthopedic issues, hips and knees, things like that. And then he's the mental health issue that y'all referred to. He's maintained for the 30-something years I've known him that he's well and doesn't need mental health care or mental health treatment. So he has not taken advantage of any of those services since he's been here. But Leroy functions well. He's very capable of maintaining himself. His attitude towards others has improved a lot over the last several years. He doesn't get into the little arguments and things with the other offenders like he did early on in his career. Most of those write-ups he got was during the early part of his incarceration. He's made tremendous improvements over the last 10 to 15 years that I've known him, and he's really doing well at this point in his incarceration. Like you said, he's 64 years old. He does have some medical health issues. I would probably argue that he should be taking advantage of our mental health services here, but Leroy differs in opinion in that perspective from me. But otherwise, as far as his incarceration, he gets along with staff much better than he has in the past. He's shown tremendous improvement over the last 30-something years. When he first came here, he was not a very friendly, not a very nice person to be around, but I enjoy visiting with him these days. He's mellowed out a lot over the last 33 years, and I think he's done a lot to prepare himself for reentry at this point.
Thank you very much, Warden. I appreciate your comments. That's all.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other questions. So at this time, we'd like to hear from Mr. James Brown.
Hello, my name
Hi.
is James Leroy Brown. I'm the sole sibling of Leroy Brown Jr. I would be if he's paroled or his sentence has been commuted, I would be his immediate counselor, provider. That is, I do feel we have accommodations for his housing. We have a re-interest program in joint partnership with another community service organization here in the Houma area. In addition to that, I pastor a church. I do have some concern. I'm sure my brother disagrees with me that I do think he needs continual mental help, counseling. The reason I say that is not just so much because of him. I myself and he are the offspring of my mother, Dorothy Brown, who passed 2 years ago. She had mental issues. Not only she, but she has 5 siblings that has mental issues. And not only she and her siblings, but my grandfather, her father had mental issues for which the state placed the kids in orphanage and dispersed them. And so I know this is a family trait, even with myself. And so that is a concern I do have, is that he would have to agree to get counseling. I know he disagrees, but there's no doubt in my mind, not just himself, but even myself, and I'm very conscious of it. But for as providing for him, I'm well able to do that. For his re-interest, I'm well able to do that. The organization for which I pastor owns numerous rental properties, somewhere in excess of 75, as part of our community service. We also provide counseling, but we can't counsel him. He's my brother, so I would have to him to be partnered with another agency. Also, I don't own, well, I own it, but I don't run a construction company. My sons do. It's a sizable construction company, state license, painting contractors, state license residential contractor, state license general contractor, state license electrical contractor, state license mechanical, heat and air contractor, and state license residential contractor. I don't know what else I can offer. The rest would be, if you ask me a question, I would take delight in answering it to try to draw a more vivid picture. There's no doubt in my mind the issue would be just getting continual counseling, being aware that there is a trait where our family is concerned. Not just myself, but even my biological sons. I had them evaluated. I have 2, one by adoption and the other was by birth. So I'm conscious of mental health. Even numerous people in our congregation, when I detect something, I advise counseling, which most times I'm glad they went to counseling. I'm very aware of mental illness because of my condition, family. But I'll pause with that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Brown. And we did receive your letter with some of that detailed information. We appreciate it. It's very helpful. We'd like to hear now from the opposition, Ms. Joan Landers.
Hi, this is Joan Landers.
Yes,
Can you
ma'am.
hear me?
Yes, ma'am, you can.
Okay, first I would say I would take great offense to the characterization of my husband by Mr. Brown with a disparaging remark that my husband was somehow involved in drugs. We were married for 5 months at the time. He was working full-time at the convenience store to help support us while he was working on his master's full-time. And so that was a total untruth. As when he kidnapped my husband and asked for his wallet, the first thing he looked at was his ID. He says, I got the wrong guy, but I'm gonna have to do something with you. So he wasn't even after my husband specifically. He was after someone else. So I would like to correct the record on that. Leroy Brown, as an ex-state trooper, knew the law and chose to plan the crimes and commit the crimes. He was not a kid when that was caught up in something that went wrong. He was 30-something years old. Leroy Brown kidnapped, robbed, and held a gun to my husband when he realized, as I said, he got the wrong guy. He had to do something with him. He made the decision to make the most of the crime with this victim, which turned out to be my husband. He made the decision to commit these crimes a second time. The first time was when he planned it to kidnap whoever he was originally going to kidnap. We still don't know who that was. He never has revealed his accomplices. He had an accomplice that was driving the vehicle, and there were supposed accomplices that he was doing this kidnapping for. That has not been revealed to this day. This alone shows he has no remorse for his crimes against my family. I fear for myself and my family if Leroy Brown is pardoned. He said long ago he would come after us. He said in the very first call to me, if I called the police, he would come after me. A couple of years ago, a private detective called my husband asking him to identify himself. Was he the person that was kidnapped in the 1980s? The private detective indicated the Brown family had hired him, but would not say why they had hired him to find my husband. Can this pardon board guarantee our safety if you let this man out? It is not fair for us to have to continue to look over our shoulder in fear. Nightmares have already started again since we heard about the pardon board, that he was even being considered for this. Respectfully, we ask that a pardon not be granted, as an ex-state trooper, Leroy Brown, chose crime. He knew better. And he does not respect the law. He does not take responsibility for his actions, blaming others for his crimes. We oppose a pardon to Leroy Brown. He is a danger to myself, to my family, and to society as a whole.
Thank you, Ms. Landers. We appreciate your participation today. So I think that's all our speakers. So at this time, we'd like to ask Mr. Brown, is there a brief statement you'd like to make before we ask for Mr. Jordan's presentation?
Yes, ma'am. I take full responsibility for my actions. I apologize to the victims, and I apologize to my family for the grief I have caused them. I did not engage in any of the classes or seek any mental health here because of the recommendation that was made to me by the psychiatrist at the Washita Parish Sheriff Office. This gentleman was good enough to come and see me on a regular basis. I'd go so far to say we became friends. He provided me with medication and counseling on a regular basis. And sometimes he made it clear that some of this was coming out of his own pocket. And this man did not quit seeing me until he was sure that I had received all the help that I needed. The biggest problem I was suffering from at the time was the insomnia. Okay. Any information, I never said the information was correct. I said that was information I had received because I received false information and bad information all the time. So any statement about Mr. Allen, that didn't necessarily mean it was true. There was no particular individual. My point was a plight. There was, and I'm not a threat to society. I barely can walk. I've had 3 hip surgeries, 2 total hip replacements. My first hip surgery went bad because the surgeon left the screw stuck in the bone, and that screw right my hip bone away. The Warden Goodman here, I would have died. The doctor was recommending not to send me back. Warden Goodman overrode that and got me to the emergency room in good time. It was deteriorating my system. It was being poisoned from the bacteria coming from the bone. The surgery to correct the problem with the first surgery went bad because he didn't leave enough room for me to stand up. If I stand up at a certain height, it would pop out of socket. So I had to have a third emergency surgery to do that. There's 2 total hip replacements in less than 7 months. I can't walk. I'm not a threat to anyone, and I want to see again. I am sincerely sorry for the crime that was committed, and I apologize to the legislature. I'm not a threat to anyone.
All right, yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Brown. We appreciate your. Yes, sir.
I just want to point out, Mr. Marabella asked about his custody status earlier. I just want to point out that offender Brown has been housed in our protective custody unit the entire time of his incarceration, which does not qualify for minimum custody. He's actually considered protective custody, and that's a form of maximum custody in itself, but he lives like a medium custody inmate, but he does not qualify for any minimum custody like an offender in general population would due to his past law enforcement employment. So I just wanted to answer that question for you, Mr. Marabella.
Thank you, Warden.
Thank you, Warden. Mr. Jordan.
Yes. First of all, I want to thank the panel so much for your patience. And I know you do this time and time again. Thank you for that. Up until this event that occurred in 1987, Leroy lived a law-abiding life. And as you can see from the letters that were provided, we attached the letters from the doctors that evaluated Leroy for his criminal conduct back in 1987, 1988, when the evaluations were done. They all determined he had an affective disorder. The state's doctor disagreed whether or not he knew right from wrong, but I think it's factually consistent that this event occurred because of his mental disease and defect. I'd like to also address Mrs. Landers. It wasn't the Brown family that hired the private investigator, it was me. When I got hired on this case years ago to assist Leroy, One of the things that we did in anticipation of possible parole hearing is to reach out to see if the victim was still around and what their position would be. It was a phone call from my private investigator, nothing to do with the Brown family, and they didn't even suggest it's something that I do as a matter of routine. I was a prosecutor for 16 years and now doing criminal defense for 16 years. And I understand how the family, with this one singular event, it affects their response to something like that. And I apologize for that. But I want them to rest assured it was not the Brown family, it was me. Secondly, as you can hear from when Leroy was giving a statement about the event, and I appreciate Mr. Marabella allowing me to interrupt you, and I really apologize for that, but you can tell he's still confused about where that event came from or why. And, obviously, Mr. Landers wasn't involved in any drug activity. Obviously, Leroy made a mistake on top of whatever mistake he was making on that day in 1987. But now we're in a position where he's been punished for his crime. He served over 34 years in jail for a crime that he did commit. He's admitted to committing, and now he has a support system out there. And he's asking for mercy. He's asking for mercy to let him live the final years of his life free with his family. The beauty of what's happened with Leroy is he still has a family out there. Others don't, that are at his same age, that he spent over 3 decades in jail. He's got a wonderful brother and family that's supportive. His brother's a pastor, and so he has all these resources to help him with residence. As you can see, that the residence housing that he has, as well as work, if he's able to do that. Leroy's not a threat to anyone. I mean, he spends a lot of his time in his wheelchair. He does try to rehabilitate himself because he's got that hip issue of hip replacement, and he's been doing 30 yards a day, 40 yards a day if he can, to try to learn to walk on it again. He is the reason why there is commutation for life sentences, someone like Leroy. A singular horrific event that he's asking mercy for, and he's got a support group out there to ensure that this pardon board, if you do make this recommendation, that he's not going to let you down. And I appreciate the warden speaking on Leroy's behalf. He's known this man for 30 years, and I think that speaks volumes. Again, I'd like to apologize to Landers' family. We in no way wanted to put them in fear, and also to ask for mercy. And thank you for your time.
Warden, I think the board's prepared to vote. Mr. Marabella?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First, let me say to Ms. Ladner, thank you very much for your courage to be here today and to speak. I hope some of your concerns were answered today. I do hear in your voice your concern. It certainly has not fallen on deaf ears. Mr. Brown, you've done some good things while you've been in prison. You had a very good record before this occurred. Clearly, something happened back then. A jury did not see it to be something significant enough to find you not guilty by reason of insanity. 2 doctors apparently saw something very significant that went on. Actually, 3 doctors, one of which said you did know the difference between right and wrong. I'm concerned about that because it seems that perhaps back then, when you were found not guilty by reason of insanity, that you were found guilty and not guilty by reason of insanity, that you sort of accepted those doctors' recommendations and kind of moved forward. I, like the warden, would have preferred to see you do a little more with the availability of mental health there in the prison system. You've accomplished some good things while you've been there. The warden speaks very highly of you. You've served nearly 34 years in prison, or over 34 years in prison. But I am concerned about the mental health issue. Your brother suggested, in spite of maybe what you say, that there's an issue there that might need to be addressed. Having said all of those things and taking into account the crime itself, the years in prison, the things that you've accomplished, my vote today would be to recommend to the governor that he commute your sentence to 99 years, make you parole, and I would suggest that you be parole eligible after serving 37 years, which is a couple of more years than what you have now. Hopefully, between now and then, you may take advantage of the mental health treatment and mental health availability there to be able to give you a stronger support. You have good family support, and I appreciate that. So good luck to you. That would be my vote.
Thank you, Mr. Marabella. Mr. Brendan?
I concur with Mr. Marabella, and I also vote to grant with parole eligibility after 37.
Thank you. Mr. Roche?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Brown, I'd like to echo all the words of Mr. Marabella, especially the advice he gave you about the taking advantage of the mental health services available at David Wade. Everyone this morning, including your brother, thinks that is a wise thing to do. So my vote is the same as Mr. Marabella, commute to 99 years with parole eligibility after serving 37 years. Good luck.
Mr. Brown, I share the concerns that have already been expressed, but I listened very carefully to what Warden Goodwin had to say about you. He had positive remarks to say. You have a low risk score. So my vote is going to be the same, to make the recommendation that your sentence be commuted to 99 years and you be made parole eligible after having served 37 years. So Mr. Brown will make that recommendation on your behalf.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden Goodwin. That concludes our business at your facility. It is now afternoon. It's 12:19. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless us.
All right, and they recommended to the governor to commute, and of course the governor did. This was the prior governor, right before he was leaving office. He commuted. It was the governor's list of 56, the governor 56, and I have a playlist for that. It's called The Purge, because it was the governor was just trying to commute as many sentences as he could before he left office. But what's interesting about this is that the commutation was signed in a little bit late for whatever reason. It took him a while to sign it, and he didn't sign it until 2024. And now he's going to come up and have a parole hearing, which takes place at the end of 2024, and it's from the new parole board, handpicked by the new governor. So this is, by all accounts, not a shoo-in. The parole board does not have a loyalty to the old governor. It's a different agenda. So there's no guarantee, again, that he will have parole. But we are fast forwarding to that parole hearing day now, and we're going to watch it. So again, this commutation hearing was 5/16/2022, and we're going to watch his parole hearing, which took place sometime late in 2024. Thank you, Sir Richard, for connecting the dots on the spreadsheet. You know, Sir Richard did this quite some time ago before Holly jumped in, and I thought that I would get to this and bring it to you. And we do have the appeal that goes over the facts of the case. I'm trying to think whether I should go over the appeal now, or let's watch the parole hearing. Let's see what they discuss. I haven't seen it yet. I don't know if they're going to grant or not. And we'll go over the details of his crime at the end. But a little synopsis of it is that he was a police officer. He got fired because a lot of things were off. And then he basically kidnapped someone who he thought was a drug dealer who wasn't, held him in the house. This guy ends up escaping, getting a gun. He saves himself, and he basically then runs away and asks for cash. And the jury, of course, didn't believe, or the courts, they didn't believe that he was crazy. And he was also asking for money. which they said that he needed money. He was financially struggling. So there was like some factors against him. But I thought his attorney did a great job regardless. We don't often see attorneys jump in and interrupt, but he said all the right things. And I have a feeling Mr. Mirabella knew who he was. I don't know, but he did all the right things. Very impressive, plays the part. Anyways, let's jump into this parole hearing and I'll unpack it with the details at the end. Today's video is sponsored by Aura. Did you know companies can take months to report a data breach? On average, it's 277 days before you even find out that your personal data has been exposed. Think about that, 277 days. That means that your sensitive information like your email, your phone number, even your financial details can already be out there. Now, it's not just one company, but major banks and corporations, they've all experienced breaches in the past year. Maybe you've seen about it in the news. Your information could be compromised right now and you wouldn't even know it. Now that's why I use Aura. Aura scans the dark web and alerts me fast if personal information has been leaked. If someone tries to open a bank account or credit card in my name, I'll know right away. I have been using Aura for about maybe 9 months now. Something that they also do that really helps me a lot is keep spam callers away. That's a big bonus for me. They actually remove my name from those spam caller lists. Now, they also provide up to $5 million in identity theft insurance and a full suite of tools to keep you protected. And this is it's all done in one app. You can try Aura for free for 14 days at aura.com/Mandu. And that's 2 weeks to find out if your data has already been exposed before you hear from a company months later. So why wait? Get some peace of mind and try out Aura for free. Take control of your digital security right now. And now let's go back to the hearing.
And before we get to them, I'd like to ask you if you would make a statement to the panel regarding why you feel like this panel should grant you parole at this time.
The change in myself, Mr. Marabello, once the warden got through speaking on my behalf, stated in his own Zoom that I had accomplished some great things there. I've proved the change. I've been beneficial. Most of the time when the warden was here, at least once a week, we'd have conference, and I contributed to help the betterment of the unit. The unit meaning the dorm. I continue to educate myself. I steadily prepare myself for the day I would become free. I'm really good at leathercraft and costume jewelry and electronic repair.
Warden, would you like to provide a little summary for us?
Yes, ma'am. Leroy Brown has been at this institution since 1988. He's been in our protection unit due to his prior employment history in the past. He's had a total of 60 write-ups during that time and prior to, I think. He had his last write-up was 2018. Leroy has completed the reentry. He's completed anger management, gone through several CTRP credit programs here at Wade. He's not a disciplinary problem at all, and he just helps out in our N5 unit as needed. And like I said, he's been here forever. So that's all.
So, Gordon, in my review, I don't see as many classes as I would expect for someone who's been in as long. Am I missing?
Well, Well, in our protection unit at one time, they really were not offered.
Okay.
In the past. Have you completed anger management and reentry? Has there any other programs you've completed?
Yeah, there was another one. I can't remember, but
Let's see.
that was no.
If I have it. No, that's pre-release. That's all I have is anger management and pre-release.
Right.
And you are, so.
Okay, we have, Mr. We have James Brown, your brother, who would like to speak in support. Mr. Brown, give you this opportunity.
Yes, ma'am. My name is James Brown. I'm Leroy Brown's brother. I started and pastored a church here in Shreveport, Louisiana. I think we started in, forgive me, I'm sorry. It would have been initially 1997. And we've grown to be sizable. We partnership with the Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government for various programs, one of which is a moderate to low income housing facility. We have several people in our facility which are social workers, certified, at least 4. We offer counseling to people who have been traumatized, have been incorporated. We also work with the Louisiana Department of Rehabilitation, both financial, management, also for employment. And so we provide both economical assistance, counseling, housing. My brother would qualify for the programs. For as housing is concerned, reintroduction to society. He would have a assigned counselor, Janita Hall, would be her name, who's already reviewed his files and ready to take him on. We have housing and we can facilitate him and help him to get reintroduced. Also employment. We provide employment as well, full-time, part-time, transitional. Be well cared for and protected in the right environment. We have at present over 100 units, rental doors. So we're able to assist them.
Is Leslie Thompson on?
I am.
Okay, so, Leslie, if you would like to speak.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I want to say first, my name is Leslie Thompson, and I am former mayor of the town of Jonesboro. It's a town up here in North Louisiana, North Central Louisiana. I thank the board for allowing me to have an opportunity to speak on Mr. Leroy Brown's behalf this morning. I was told that I would probably have about 5 minutes. I hope I was told correctly. If I need to shorten it, I will, but I made a few notes so as to stay within the confines. Is that okay?
Yeah, 3 is better.
All right. 3 is even better. I'll try to rush it through this. I want you to know that I've served as mayor for 3 terms here in Jonesboro. And 15, 16 years prior to that, I served as police juror, parish representative, not to just give you a bio of my public service, but to let you know that in 2012, I was accused of a crime. 2012, I was I was charged with malfeasance in office. 2013, I was sentenced to 6 years inside of the system. And during that period of time is when I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Brown. I wanted to give you that information so that because we wound up doing time at the same facility during the same period of time. Now, for me, fortunately, 2017, the Supreme Court overturned and remanded my charges. So I'm able to come before you today to talk to you without any felony charges. But I wanted to let you know that so that you would know how I came to know Mr. Brown. While there at David Wade, for those 2 years that I spent on the inside, we lived in the same dormitory, N5. We lift weights together every other day. So I got a chance to know the man. I got a chance to know his character. I got a chance to know what he was really all about. So I'm asking you, I know today we are living in a society where we have House Bill number 9 that was just passed, and much harder now for eligibility and that kind of thing, for parole eligibility. But if you're looking for someone to give an opportunity of release, you're looking for an offender to do that, who most represents the finished product of rehabilitation, that would be Mr. Leroy Brown. If you're looking for one who is truly remorseful for the crime and the criminal activity that he performed, that he did in the earlier days, that would be Mr. Leroy Brown. If you're looking for an opportunity to release an offender who's least likely to be a recidivist, who's least likely to come back to the prison system, that would be Mr. Leroy Brown. So as I close, and as we say that we understand that today we need to be tougher on crime, which I do agree, but I also say that there must be a balance of justice. And in saying that, Leroy Brown is not the same guy that he was 30 years ago. He's no longer meaner than a junkyard dog. He's no longer that guy who it says that he was meaner than old King Kong. He's a guy that we hope that you would give him an opportunity to have a second chance to re-enter into society. And so while the previous administration did grant him clemency, we're just asking for this administration to grant him that release so that he would have that same opportunity that I had, which God granted me, which was another opportunity to become a productive part of society. I thank you for the time that you've given me, and I appreciate it. And I try to cut it down to 3 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you.
We also have Mr. Roger Jordan, who is your attorney, and we'd like to give him an opportunity to speak now.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity for Leroy to get the possibility to get parole eligibility now and be paroled. I've been knowing Leroy for several years now through the governor's commutation process and to now. I know that he's now 66 years old. He's been incarcerated for almost 37 years for an aggravated kidnapping charge. But this was a singular event of misconduct and criminal conduct by Leroy Brown back 37 years ago. He was a high school graduate. He was a college graduate for law enforcement, Houma police officer, and a state police officer. And although I'm not giving an excuse to the parole board now for the conduct that incarcerated him, but at the time, 3 doctors had diagnosed Leroy with a mental illness, affective disorder. They disagreed whether or not he knew right from wrong, and he subsequently was convicted and given a life sentence. But factually, this incident was out of character for Leroy Brown. Punishment, he spent over 37 years now incarcerated. He was a young man when he was incarcerated. Now he's going through 3 hip surgeries. A few weeks ago, I believe he had back surgery. He was in a wheelchair for a short period of time. I know that he's been through a rehabilitative process. He's got high blood pressure. Now he's a 66-year-old man asking to live the remainder years of his life with his family. I had the pleasure of meeting his mother and father in one of my visits to Leroy when Warden Goodwin was there. Since that time, his mother's passed away, and his father, who's I believe almost 90 years old, still I think tries to cut his own grass. I met him as well. He comes from a good family. You can see that by the discussions with Pastor Brown, and this was out of character for his family and for him. And in support, I know that Warden Goodwin had made a reference and a character reference for Leroy Brown, because as I think the court warden said, and thank you for being there, Warden, is that he has spent forever at David Wade Correctional Center, forever at David Wade Correctional Center in protective custody, if you will, having previously been in law enforcement. I believe, based on the references we provided to the parole board and from his brother, that Leroy is going to have a foundation to really strive if he's released. and we ask for mercy for this panel for his release. I will tell you, the last time I spoke to Leroy was just a couple of days ago, and the first thing he mentioned was the victim in this case, Mr. Landers, okay, and how he was apologetic for what had happened, and it was out of character for him. And I know that nothing can undo what was done, but I think based on 37 years of incarceration, he has served his punishment, and I think he's shown now that he can be a good citizen. And thank you for the opportunity to let me speak today.
Thank you very much for your comments. We do have letters of opposition to his release from the victim. At this point, Mr. Freeman is going to ask you some questions. Mr. Brown.
Okay, Mr. Brown. Who were you intending to kidnap? I mean, I know you kidnapped the wrong person. Who were you intending to kidnap?
There was no intention of any specific person.
So you just went and, I mean, what was the reasoning? To get money?
No, it was very well proven that Mr. Landers didn't have any money.
And I know you were undergoing some mental health problems at that time. Are you on mental health medication?
I am not, as part of the clemency stipulation, I was to be examined by mental health services here, and I was. And the result of the evaluation was no mental health services required.
Okay. Wardens, do y'all have the report on that and who conducted it?
No, I don't, we don't have it in here. We might have it, mental health probably has it, and we can get it if we can call them and get some information.
I just want to make sure one was done. That's what I want to make sure he's had a mental health evaluation.
206. Oh no, she's not there. Lisa.
Okay, I'll call, step out and call.
I'll thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, Mr. Brown, and you haven't taken many classes, and I understand they wasn't really offered, but they have been offered lately. Why haven't you taken more classes?
I did a lot of training here, leathercraft, and electronics. When I started in leathercraft years ago, it was a very poor department, and we don't have VOTEC in N5. So once I trained myself how to do it, then I train others, and they have an opportunity to provide for themselves once they're on the street, or they could either supplement their own income. It's the same thing with the custom jury.
Right. That's just, I mean, that's crafts and job oriented. I need to know more to see that can help you on the outside not commit another crime. Have you taken victim opposition? I mean, victim awareness?
I don't think I've taken victim awareness. There was another course I'd taken that had something to do with victim awareness. I don't remember the name of it, but there was another course that I had.
Probably in your pre-release.
I believe it was.
It goes over it, but they don't teach the whole class. As Ms. Ledoux stated, you do have opposition. You have opposition from Judge John Joyce, DA Steve Tooth, Sheriff Jay Russell, Chief Victor Zardin, Monroe PD, Jason Pleasant, the victims, both Freddie and his wife opposed, and their daughter is opposed. So you can't do much about that, but I just wanted to state that for the record. Where do you plan to work when you get out?
Initially, my employment will be provided by my brother. But I can make a living. I was making one while almost $800 a month on the custom jury. But I was told that was too much. I couldn't make that much, so I cut it down to 400 a month, which was allowed. I'm really good at that. Really good at the leather craft. The startup is poor. I have all the financial support, and he's there to tell you from my brother. But I will do that. I am handicapped. I've had 3 failed hip surgeries. I was involved in a fatality on I-20, 7/19/21. I had back surgery around the 18th of last month. I still have broke bone in my neck. That has to be repaired. I broke my shoulder blade. I broke my shoulder. Both knees were damaged. I sustained a concussion. So it
That was in a wreck in 21.
7/19/21, and I just had surgery. Just had the back surgery.
You in a van or something?
Correct. It was a transport van. I had 2 sessions to go in physical therapy, and they were so impressed with me they'd actually got Oshner to give me a. I was in a wheelchair at the time, but I was transitioning to a 4-prong cane and a single prong cane, and since the institution didn't provide that, and the family wouldn't let it in, the person wouldn't let the family send one in. They actually gave me that equipment, and I had those 2 sessions to go, and I got in that wreck. I'll be rehabbing the rest of my life. I'm wheelchair bound now. I have the report, intracranial bleed, cervical fracture, thoracic fracture, lumbar fracture, humeral fracture, tendon injury, intra-abdominal injury, long bone fracture, rib fracture, and several other things from the accident. I can't take a step, not one step.
So you're wheelchair bound. Warden,
Yes, sir,
did you find out anything for me?
Yes, Warden Burgos is on the phone with mental health now. They didn't actually do a mental health report like here, but we did put him before Dr. Seal, which is our psychologist, that James is getting the information right now on that.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Okay, are we prepared to vote?
I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session, please.
Second.
Beasley?
Yes.
Token?
Yes.
Jeremy? Yes. We're gonna discuss some private information, and we will be confidential information. We'll be back.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank Assistant Warden, did you have any information from Mr. Freeman on his question?
Yes, ma'am. So I was able to I was contacted by our mental health department. His mental health evaluations was conducted by Dr. Seal on June of 2024. During his legal defense, the mental health evaluation, of course, that's a self-reported information. There was no diagnosis at that time. Dr. Seal indicated there was no mental health diagnosis currently required, and he'll follow up as needed, what they call PRN, as needed.
Yeah, I have a question, Warden, on programming. Do you offer victim awareness there at your facility?
Yes, ma'am.
How long is that class?
6 months.
6 months.
6 months, okay?
7 months, I'm sorry. It's a 7-month program.
Okay, so I think the panel is prepared to vote. Mr. Freeman is going to be voting first.
Okay, Mr. Brown, I was on your clemency hearing, and at that time, we said you needed to serve at least 37 years. I think you've been in there right at 37, or is it a little over?
October the 22nd of this year will be 37 years.
Okay, you've done well. You got good comments from the facility. You had good comments from the mayor, your brother. You got good family support. So my recommendation is gonna be to grant conditionally on you completing the victim awareness class. And conditions of parole will be that you live with your brother or residence by him. I mean, I think he said he had a residence for you. And that you have no contact whatsoever with the victim. And you have a curfew from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. That's my one.
So no freewheeling on that wheelchair.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Chilla.
I concur with Mr. Freeman.
Oh, Mr. Brown, to tell you the truth, coming into this hearing, I had some real concerns, to be honest. I really did. And I will let you know that your brother had some help me be assured that you were going to be going to a very stable environment that will provide well for your needs. And so based on what I've heard today, my vote is also to grant after you've completed victim awareness class, and that your employment plan needs to be with your brother's housing opportunity. Okay. So today you've been granted, sir.
I'll say thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you.
I think I'll say thank you too. Frankly, I think he should be getting out. It feels kind of insane to me that he even needs to take one more program. He has been locked up forever. Like he committed this crime on October 21st, 1987. And we'll go through it. It was a crazy crime. He was a police officer. I could see them throwing the book at him. But a life sentence? I don't know about that. And then he got it to jump through all these hoops. And they're like, you need to take one more program. Now, I am happy to tell you at the time of this recording, while I'm finally doing the unpacking, it's March 31st, 2025. And he is out. He is home. And there's nothing to report, which is, of course, a good thing. But it's just so strange. They're so drunk on the Kool-Aid sometimes, this parole board. It's like they have to add another condition on top of the commutation. Miss Ledoux, it's like, really? I mean, come on, really? Does it really make a difference that he's going to sit in a classroom, for 7 months so that he can be taught come on. It's just, to me, it's like, it's just so it's laughable, really. I mean, let the man out, for God's sakes. But also what I found to be fascinating was the idea that he's been in PC his entire stint. I mean, I would think that at some point they'd be like, you're one of us. I know you were a cop for 7 years, but first of all, if he's fired from the police department and was supposedly doing this to bring awareness to inmate struggles, wouldn't that benefit him being an inmate? Wouldn't they be like, we respect you? And I wonder, I think so much has gotten lost. And it's also, it just shows that, he was interviewed by someone at DOC. Does he have any problems? And they're like, well, they found him not guilty of having problems in court back 37 years ago. So he doesn't have problems now, no mental problems. And it's like, that sounded like a really sound examination. Really, it did. I have no idea what to believe. I know that there's huge problem. Look, you're not going to win the temporary insanity cases or the insanity cases. And you might even argue that the jury did the right thing because apparently no one thinks he's insane as soon as he gets locked up, right? I don't know. It's weird. The whole thing was weird to me, but but I'm happy that he got out anyways. Like, let the man out. He's not a threat to anyone. He didn't kill anyone. At 11 p.m. on October 21st, 1987, the victim, Richard Landers, was closing the store where he worked. The defendant approached the victim, pointed a pistol at him, and forced him into the back seat of a car driven by an unidentified accomplice. The defendant forced the victim at gunpoint to turn over his wallet, which contained cash, credit cards, and identification documents. The victim later was forced into the car's trunk. After a 2-hour trip, can you imagine spending 2 hours in your trunk? Probably thinking you're going to die. That is just insane. The victim was forced into a closet in the defendant's residence. The defendant told the victim he wasn't the one they were supposed to kidnap, but he told the victim to get his boss's telephone number to see if he'd pay for the victim's release. At 2:02 a.m., as established by telephone company toll records, a phone call was made from the defendant's residence to the victim's wife. Oh my God. Can you imagine his wife getting that call? The victim was forced to tell her that he had been kidnapped and that she should call his employer but not call the police. She notified the police. A recording device was placed on her telephone. Several other phone calls were taped. The caller later was identified as the defendant. In mid-morning of October 22nd, the victim untied himself and so October 22nd, is this the next day? Yes, it is. The victim untied himself and escaped from the closet where he had been held captive. I hate that it brings up the copy with citation. Let me just highlight it. Can I not just highlight it? I can't. It's annoying. He found a pistol and unsuccessfully attempted to hold the defendant pending arrival of the police. The defendant returned to his residence for a short time and apparently made a telephone call demanding $50,000 in cash. $50,000 in order to secure the release of the victim. Isn't that weird? So the victim already has a gun pointed at him, and then knowing that, he still comes back and asks for 50 grand. He then fled through a wooded area and was apprehended the next day. After his capture, the defendant, a former police officer, was advised of his rights. He asked the arresting officers why he was being charged with armed robbery and aggravated kidnapping, since he hadn't taken anything and hadn't tried to extort any money. The defendant pled not guilty and not guilty of reasons of insanity, although the defendant argues that no motive was established. There was testimony concerning the defendant's financial difficulties prior to the offenses. I mean, and anyone to do this, you would have to be insane. But it is funny that he plays the whole thing now that he was doing this because of trying to bring awareness to inmates, but there's no mention of that in this testimony. And it does make you wonder. You know, his defense attorney, the former prosecutor guy, saved the day. But it is just funny. It's funny that it does seem like he's clearly nuts. But all the people, the therapist, the psychiatrist, even in DOC, they're all like, no, everything's fine. Everything's fine. During testimony, LSP Trooper, the trial court ruled out the jury's hearing that Blunchy could testify about the defendant's statements concerning his financial problems, but not about the defendant's intention to live off his girlfriend. The jury returned. The prosecutor asked about the girlfriend's job, quoted as saying that she had a good job and was supporting. The jury was excused. I mean, it's weird that all these years later he's sticking to this rant, and maybe that was like the story that he made of himself so that he could survive better in prison. I don't know, but he was still in PC. Defendant argues a new trial should have been granted. Blah blah blah. Victim's wife demanding $50,000 ransom was that there was no proof the call was made prior to the time of the victim's escape. Oh, what? Okay, that's stupid. The victim's wife told notify employer by kidnapping. The victim was held in a closet. The victim was present. Wow. I love that the victim escaped and got a gun. I do love that. And who knows? Who knows? He might have been killed if if he didn't do that. But man, the dude served long enough and let him out. He's not a danger. Can you imagine he got in that car accident while in prison too? And also no one mentioned that, like the warden, no one seemed to mention that until he brought it up. I don't know. He seemed kind of sloppy on the DOC side. That was my takeaway. But really, what do you expect? Anyways, there you have it. Thank you, Sir Richard, for time to go to these hearings. If you want to see more of the governor's purge, which are by default, almost by default return of hearings, check out the purge playlist. And with that, I'll let you go.
Is that he has spent forever at David Wade Correctional Center, forever at David Wade Correctional Center in protective custody, if you will, having previously been in law enforcement. I believe, based on the references we provided to the parole board and from his brother, that Leroy is going to have a foundation to really strive if he's released. And we ask for mercy for this panel for his release.